Alright, so we got a Mule 4010 with some factory headlights in it that's fogged over. We could take the time and buff it out, or we can do probably the best thing, and that's install some new LED lights. These are what we're going to install. It's the closest match that I was able to find as far as the size. Now they're a little bigger than what they need to be, and I might have to cut away some of this bezel here to get it to fit. I think it's about maybe 1/8 of an inch too big, but nevertheless, these put out way more light than the factory ones did, and I think we're gonna take a measurement and find out, you know, how much current these things take to operate versus the factory ones. So the first thing I did was took out these 2 screws, and I've never had this out before, and I'm not exactly even sure how to do it, but we're gonna figure it out. Alright, so there's 2 screws, or at least 1 screw, coming in from this side, holding this other side of this bezel in place. So I'm going to have to try to locate a way of how to access the screws. Alright, so now we got to figure out how we're going to set this light inside of here and have it be sturdy and secure. So we got some metal back in here, and we might be able to run a bracket up to the bezel or to this general area, or we might be able to attach it to the bezel, but usually there's not enough strength in that, so I'm not sure what we're going to do about that, but I'm going to spend a minute thinking about it and I'll bring you right back. Alright, so here's our bezel and our new light. It's actually a really good fit. It's a real tight fit though, so I'm not real sure, you know, how we're gonna get it fit in there, and so I'm not real sure how we're gonna get this to stay where it needs to be, but I'm still working on that. But I just wanted to show you. I mean, there's not a better fitting light probably than this one right here, and this one's a Headlight. It's not the brightest one, but it's going to be brighter than the other ones I installed on the last mule that I did. So customer's going to be happy with it. That's all that matters. We just got to figure out how we're going to get this thing mounted in there, and I'm still working on that, so I'll let you see that as soon as I come up with an idea. Alright, so basically what I've come up with on this is that I think we're going to take a piece of angle and, hold on a second, it's kind of difficult to get it lit up to where you can see and be able to get these pieces in there to show you. Alright, so here's what we got. We got a piece of angle. This isn't the right size. It was just something that I was kind of testing out to see what we were going to do. But basically, we're going to weld that piece of angle to this piece of metal on the inside. And it's going to be difficult for me to kind of show you how that's going to work, but we're going to kind of butt it up against the face of it right there, so that it's just, you know, sticking out. So we want this light to where it's basically just on the other side of this ring right here. So we want that bezel to be, I mean, right in front of this bulb. We don't want this bulb inside there an inch or two or whatever. To get the maximum light out of it, we want this as close to the bezel as possible. So I set this back in here. We're gonna have to cut this piece out right there and run that piece of angle from whatever that is in there, that piece of steel, all the way out to about right here. And then we've got some brackets that go on it, and then ultimately it's going to look kind of like the bracket, the whole bracket assembly is going to be looking something kind of like that. And these angles, this angle right here is going to be much strong enough to keep this in place and keep it pretty steady, you know, driving off-road and everything. Even then, it's a floodlight, so it's not going to be projecting a beam anywhere. It's just going to be a whole bunch of light everywhere. So you're not going to see it moving around, but it's not going to move around a whole lot anyway. But you always want to make sure that you got it pretty well figured out before you go cutting somebody's pieces of their equipment into pieces, because nothing would be worse than hacking this all the way up and not being able to produce what you needed to out of it. So I'm going to save cutting this until the very end, but I'm going to go ahead and get my angle cut, and we're going to weld it to this piece down in there. And I need one that's about an inch longer because it needs to come, and I'm actually going to have to cut away a piece of this because when this bezel's installed, you can see that little piece in there. It's kind of right in the way, and we want to get that light up here as far as possible. The other thing, yeah, no, that should be good. That should be good. So let me work on getting that angle cut, and it should be a pretty straightforward upgrade here. I mean, if you have a welder, you'll be able to do it yourself for sure. If not, there certainly isn't any reason why you couldn't get a piece of flat stock, bend a 90-degree angle in it in a vise, and then run you 2 screws in to that piece of metal right there and have it come forward. So either way, if you have a welder, you can weld it in. If you don't, you can screw it in. But I'm probably going to weld it in. So, because I'm probably going to go with this angle iron, and that will be the strongest way, the angle iron over the flat stock. So let me get that cut, and I'll bring it back when I get a little bit closer with it. Alright, so I need to start with a piece of angle about, we're going to start with, we're going to do 6 1/4 inches. Let me get 2 of those cut. Alright, so I stuck my bezel back in there, and I told you we're going to have to probably notch out a section of this. So what I wanted to do, set this in there and use my scribe and mark the center point. And for right now, it doesn't really have to be exact, but I just wanted to get that put in there. So when I weld my angle in there, well, I guess I'm gonna have to notch this out probably pretty soon, but now I know where this thing needs to pretty much line up at when I get my angle welded into place. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole in my angle so I can go ahead and mount my bracket on it, and then get the light mounted onto this. That way I can just get closer and narrow in where I need to actually get this thing welded in, like at what height on that bar, and make sure that the stick out on it's, you know, pretty close to getting that lamp as far out as possible. So I think the next thing I'll do, I'll go ahead and drill these, and I'll cut you back in a second. Alright, so I got this light mounted to my piece of angle, and I'm at that point now where I'm going to have to set this in there, but because the bracket's so long, which is what I wanted, to get it to get down in here, to get any further with getting this lined up, I'm going to have to cut this piece right here. So I put this thing up there to see, and basically any part of this can be cut all the way up until this little ridge right here, because the bracket's going to cover, not the bracket, but the bezel's going to cover any kind of cutting that goes on in there. So usually what I do is I work from the inside out, and definitely want to cut parts of the vehicle at last, because I don't want to start cutting something and find out that you know, something further on the inside should have been different, or I should have made it a little bit different, or this bracket wouldn't work, so I got to take a different approach. But so far everything's been pretty cut and dry. So I'm going to take a cutoff wheel and cut a notch in this plastic and see where I'm at, you know, once that's done. Alright, so I went, changed shirts, grabbed something to eat, and I'm going to go ahead and get this cut away here. The video might mute out, that's because I'm going to try to cut the air compressor noise. If you've watched my other videos, you know how annoying that is. Alright, cool. So it's pretty much exactly what I was hoping for. So let's go ahead and trim this thing. We'll cut into here, cut into there, and try to get most of this stuff out of the way real quick. That's basically what we were going for. So now we just have to figure out how we're going to get this thing welded into position. So I'm going to go ahead and get this bracket welded onto this support back there, and I'll bring it back in just a moment. Alright, so catch you up on where I'm at here. I painted the ends of these because once they're installed in there, it's going to be mighty hard to paint that part of it. And I always try to paint the brackets so that they don't rust. I cleaned off the metal in there so the weld has something to stick to. I got a water hose ready and a fire extinguisher, because usually farm equipment is full of dust and hay. You look down in there, I mean, it's, you know, definitely a fire hazard. So I'm gonna wet all that stuff, and I'm gonna weld this one in here, and we'll see where we're at. I'm going to weld the upper right hand corner of it, and that will give me a little bit of room for adjustability, and then I'll weld all the rest of it in solid. Also, I took a look at something, and the old bulbs are listed at 35 watts and the new bulbs are 27 watts. So it's going to be a direct wire in replacement. The factory switch and the factory electrical system, the fuse, everything, it's all going to be plug and play. The new ones use less power, but they're going to put out more light because of the efficiency of the LEDs. So let me get this bracket welded and I'll bring you back in just a second. All right. So we got that upper corner right there welded. That leaves the rest of this pretty sturdy, but you can still bend it around if you have to. Sometimes you'll break the tack loose, but I left it there for a second to let it burn in pretty good. So I mean, I can already tell it's pretty far off, because that was where the center was supposed to be. So getting closer. And there we go. Broke the tack. So it's still kind of there. So I'm pretty sure it's pretty close. So it's kind of crooked, kind of going down on an angle. So I'm going to straighten it up and put a second tack on there, and then mount the light. I'll probably go ahead and start by mounting the light and just kind of see. Nah, I need to put that second tack on there and see where we're at, and then should be able to burn the whole thing in all the way around. So I'll set you up here and you'll see kind of how it goes, I guess. Okay, so I got it lined up a little closer, and so at this point I can unscrew this bolt and put the light on there, put the bezel in front of it, and see where we're at. All right, for right now, it's just going to be flopping around in here until the end, because it's just going to be too much of a pain. But it kind of lets you know for sure where it's at. That's pretty good right there. I'm happy with that. So at this point, I'm just going to weld it all the way around and get it burned in pretty good. I mean, it's so close right now that even just welding on it might warp something and bring it out of spec. So it might have to be pulled or beat into place when we get done with it, but it's pretty close right now. Alright, that's where we're at with it. It's all welded in. That's not going to go anywhere. We got a vertical weld and a horizontal weld. I mean, that's pretty good. Another thing about farm equipment, it's hard to find a good ground. Usually you have to grind you a new spot someplace where it's convenient, but there was enough room to get this ground in here. And once it cools down, I'll paint it all and it'll be rust proof and you'll never see it anyways. So from this point, I guess I just need to put the light on, get it bolted down, and then bolt the bezel back in place after it cools down and it gets some paint on it, and it'll be good to go. Then we just got to do the other side. Yeah, it definitely lifted up some. Alright, I think, yeah. So the one with the yellow tracer is negative. Polarity always matters on a LED light. These splices are called weather tight splices or something. They got heat shrink on them, so once you make your connections, you heat these up, it shrinks around the wire and doesn't allow any moisture to get into it. Alright, so put some conduit around it, shove it back in there. Now it's not going to chafe on anything. That's going to keep it from shorting out. So now we just tighten the lamp down, and we can go ahead and put the bezel on and be done with it completely on this side. Pretty sure this thing's up a little too high now, but let's test fit it and see where we're at. Actually, I like it just exactly how it is. Alright, show you where we're at here with this thing. It's got a little shade on the top of it that I wanted to try to maintain, and there's virtually no unreasonable amount of gap going around the whole thing. Now, I did that when I was cutting the bracket off the inside. If it wasn't for that, I don't think I could have done it any better, but I'm really happy with the results on that. I'm disappointed with myself at nicking that thing, cutting it a little bit too much there. I'll honestly be surprised if I can do the other side as accurately as this one is, but I'm going to do the other side, and I won't put you through the misery of watching me do 2 of these, but I will cut you back on after I'm done with the other side. Alright, so we got it all together now. We got one in there and one over here. Learned from my mistakes on the first one and did not nick the bezel. Fits pretty much as good as the other one. I think this one fits perfect though. This one fits better than the other one, but I nicked the housing on that one. Alright, so we got this one installed, which I showed you earlier. Got this one installed. So that's what they look like right there, but we're going to go on a test drive on the road and see how it really looks. So we can actually test the function of it. So this is the light output. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, it lights up plenty enough for a little slow moving off-road vehicle. I mean, it's probably better than low beams on a regular car anyways. Definitely more light output than the other one, so customer's definitely going to be happy with it. Alright, so this is the vehicle we had worked on. And that's what the headlights look like. So all in all, test drove last night, pretty good. You can definitely see a whole lot better than what you could see before. So they fit in those pockets in the bezel pretty good. So customer's going to be pretty happy with it.